Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. Today we are joined by David Fetterolf. David is the president of Stratus Video. David, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Jonathan. I'm glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Today, we're going to be talking about how building a good team helps drive success. And I think that this is going to be a topic on which a lot of our listeners are going to be able to derive a lot of value. But before we get into today's topic, David, maybe you can tell us a little about Stratus Video and what you and your team are up to these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So Stratus Video is a company that was founded about 5.5, 6 years ago. And we provide video remote interpreting to hospitals and health systems around the country. And what that means is that if you come into a hospital and you do not speak English, you really can't talk to the doctor. And sort of the old-fashioned method of communicating with physicians was over the phone, where the physician would pick up a headset and the patient would pick up a headset and you'd get an interpreter on the line. And that was a lower, inexpensive way to communicate, and you could get interpreters quickly. And the other way was to have an interpreter in person standing next to the physician and the patient. That's the best communication session you can have, but it's tough to get interpreters and it's expensive. So we came out with a video solution that works on iPads that with a touch of the button, we can bring up a live certified healthcare interpreter on the iPad, looking at the patient, communicating with both the patient and the doctor over video. So it's almost as good as an in-person session, but at sort of the speed of answer and the cost structure of over the phone. So that's what we do. That's where we made our name. We've had, explosive growth over the last 5 years. Been on the Inc. 500 for 5 years in a row now. And the prospects are looking really good for the next couple of years as well.
That's fantastic. Well, and it's got to feel, it's got to feel great at the end of the day. Also, doing what you're doing. Facilitating and enhancing a healthcare experience. That's what a fantastic field to be contributing to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd say that is one of the best things about this company is that we literally are helping people every single day communicate with providers. In some cases, saving lives, helping to deliver babies, helping in very stressful situations. And it's really rewarding for myself, and it's very rewarding for every single employee at the company. And it really is one of the things that makes Stratus a very special place to work.
That's fantastic. And obviously, you've been met with a lot of success. You've been met with a lot of growth. That's one of the reasons we're so lucky to have you on the show today, because you have, over the last 5 years, seen that growth. And so we wanted to tap into your wisdom. We wanted to tap into your expertise, and we wanted to talk about, again, today, how building a good team really helps drive success. So, David, you had mentioned before we started recording that there's a certain philosophy that they teach in business school. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny. I went to business school many, many years ago. But back then, they would teach that, hey, listen, the most important constituent are the shareholders, and you've got to create value for those shareholders, and you do that by paying attention to your clients, right? And then finally by through your employees. And I would say that is not the way to run a business, focusing on shareholders first, clients second, and employees third. And I would argue that it is exactly the opposite of that. That if you really focus on your employees and your team first and foremost, and make sure that they have the tools and the support, and the infrastructure, and the autonomy to run, then that's the most important thing. And if you focus on them first, then the clients will be happy and you'll have good client experiences. And then finally, the shareholder value will be created because of those first two things, focusing on employees first, clients second, and then the third would be shareholder value is created. So I think it's the opposite of what I was taught in business school. And I think they still teach it to some regards that way.
Yeah. Well, and it's, it makes a lot of sense when you explain the progression, the way that it sort of flows through from the employees to the clients, thereby the end result being the shareholders are happy. So it does make a lot of sense. David, let's kind of start then at the beginning. One of the things you had mentioned before we started recording was, number one, you want to hire the best, but kind of what does that look like? What's that process?
Well, it's a long process, and you need to use multiple different resources, including, your contacts and in the industry. And I mean, each of the managers that are doing the hiring, using all of their contacts, using social media and using, referrals from employees and other people, So that's the first step, is just building the pipeline so you're getting good applicants coming in. And then it's very important to have a rigorous interview process and to make sure that you're doing everything you can to get the best people. So not making decisions quickly because you need to fill a spot, but really taking your time to make sure you're getting the best person for that particular position. And lots of times, in my opinion, obviously you want to hire people with experience in that position, but also, you sort of, in my opinion, you want to have the best athletes. You want to have somebody, maybe they don't have the best experience, but you think they've got the best personality for that particular position, and you can train them on the content. That it's key that you really spend the time in the recruiting process, bringing in the best people you possibly can bring in.
Yeah. And one of the things that I found most interesting was you had said, once you've obviously gone through this process and you've attempted to hire the best and you've been very methodical and deliberate about it, you also want to give your people ownership. Did I get that right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, to grow a big company and a fast-moving company, you absolutely, number one, the most important thing in the company is the people and the team. That's everything. The culture, the teamwork, and the people that are part of the company. That's your most important asset. That those are the people that figure out the products and develop the products and put the marketing plans together and sell the products. So focusing on the team and the people is number one in my book. And then pushing responsibility down and letting the different teams and the different people in the company make decisions without checking with their boss, who has to check with their boss, and giving them the autonomy and the responsibility to make mistakes, frankly, because not every decision is going to be right. And you've got to make sure that everybody's running hard and fast and making the best decisions possible. And if a mistake's made, just go back and change and keep moving. So basically pushing the responsibility down is critical, and trusting your team to, perform is just as critical. That's part of pushing responsibility down.
Yeah. Giving them ownership and letting it sounds like obviously part of that is letting your employees take risks. There's also got to be a balance though, right? How do you handle when mistakes are made and prevent the same mistakes from being made? What's your process for, the most effective way to empower your employees, allowing them to take risks, but also learning from those risks and continuing to move forward?
Yeah, no, absolutely. If any big mistake is made, we do reviews on those to figure out what we learned from, whatever went wrong. And then we make the adjustments. And the key is just continually learning how to do things better. And the market is changing as well. So sometimes you made a decision that really you thought was really the right decision, but the market changed, right? Or something else happened. And the key is really just learning and then adjusting and quickly making the changes within the organization to keep moving. Mm-hmm. If you're running a company that's growing, 5% a year, I think it's still important to, push the responsibility down and give people, the authority to make decisions. But when you're growing slower, it doesn't have as much an impact if you're not making decisions quickly, and moving on to the next topic or next item on your task list.
Mm-hmm. And David, I want to ask, do you have a process in place? Do you have a philosophy on, you've tried to hire the best, you've tried to give someone ownership, you've tried to empower them to take risks, but you get to a point where you just decide this is maybe for whatever reason, it's not even that they're a bad employee, it might just be a bad fit, where you come to a place where this is not working out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, no matter what you do in the hiring process, you never hire, correctly, probably even 80% of the time,
Mm-hmm.
So you're always, bringing people on that are not a good fit for whatever reason. And, depending on the position, in some positions, it's a little easier to recognize that maybe that person's not a good fit than in other positions. But in order to keep the company growing and moving in a positive direction, if you realize you made a mistake, it's best to move on and replace that person as quickly as possible. And it's better for that person to go get into a company where they do have a good fit, and it's definitely better for the company you're running to, make the tough decision and move on as quickly as possible when you do make that mistake. And those mistakes, you're always going to make. There's no way to prevent it.
Yeah, well, and especially for a company like Stratus with that sort of astronomical growth over the last 5 years, I mean, there's going to be inevitably some growing pains, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and speaking of Stratus, David, one of the things that we've really been enjoying asking our guests on the show is, at the end of the day, what would you like your legacy to be? I mean, whether that is with Stratus, whether that is professionally across the board, whether that's personally or a combination of those, what would you like that to be at the end of the day?
I think, my legacy at Stratus will be, the fact that we've created, just a great company with a great team. And it's a unique company in that we truly are helping, thousands and millions of patients communicate with providers and every single day. And so, it's just a tremendous amount of satisfaction that because of this unique technology that we brought to the market, we're able to help people. And together with myself and the entire team at Stratus, we really have created an amazing company and are affecting millions of lives around the United States. And I think that is the legacy, and it's very, very rewarding for everybody on the Stratus team.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a fantastic legacy. So, David, thank you again so much for joining us today, for sharing your story and sharing your wisdom with our audience. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Take care.
There are lots of ways to build a community, and we've chosen to build the B2B growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.